Shua Tov, everyone. Welcome back to Tillis Tells Stories of Saturday Night. The title of this week's video is An Unusual Portrait Choice. I modified it from mailing of Gem, Here's My Story project, which part of their Encounter with the Lubavitcher Rebbe project, where more than 1,000 videotaped interviews were conducted with seniors who knew the Rebbe in the 1930s, the 1940s, and the 1950s. The one you are about to meet is Mr. Yechiel Lasri, and I'll let him tell his story. We are Sephardic Jews of rich ancestry that emigrated to Israel from Qasr Souk, Morocco. This had to do with why, when I was about 10, I began to wonder about an unusual picture that hung on the wall of our home. Our Sephardi neighbors generally decorated their walls with portraits of Sephardi tzaddikim, usually arrayed in turbans and robes. But we had a framed picture of a bearded Ashkenazi man in a black suit, in a black hat, a suit, and a tie. At one time I asked my mother about him, and she told me this story. Many years before, in the early 1950s, after the birth of my older brother Shmuel and sister Simcha, she became pregnant again. It was a normal pregnancy, 9 months, and a normal birth in the local hospital. But a half hour after the birth, the baby died. The family was very upset, of course, but when it happened the second time, they were shocked. And when it happened the third time, they began to panic. And then my mother became pregnant again. During the pregnancy, now fearful, she consulted with specialists and rabbis. The doctor said there was no health problem, that this pregnancy was completely normal, just as the others had been, and that they had no idea at all what could be wrong. Then one of the rabbis in our city, Rabbi Rachamim Lasri, a relative of our family from whom I had learned Aleph Beis in school in Morocco before I immigrated to Israel, he suggested that she should turn to the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Brooklyn, in the United States of America. At that time, the Rebbe's name was famous throughout Morocco because of the emissaries he had sent, some of whom our family were acquainted with. So it was decided that Rabbi Lasri should write to the Rebbe. My mother told me that Rabbi Lasri took this very seriously. He first immersed in the mikveh, and then he sat down to write a letter to the Rebbe relating our family's story. Shortly after, there came a response. The Rebbe said that the mezuzahs of the house, as well as my father's tefillin, should be checked to assure that they are kosher. Whatever is wrong with them should be fixed. My parents should give tzedakah, charity, and with God's help, everything will turn out well, and a boy will be born. He also made one small request. If possible, could the son be named after my father-in-law, the Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak. Of course, the Rebbe's response was greeted with great joy. The mezuzah of the house was checked, and indeed it needed to be fixed, as did my father's tefillin, and everyone hoped for the best. This time the pregnancy ended well. A healthy baby boy was born on August 21st, 1957, and he survived. But when it came to naming the baby, the family faced a dilemma that they hadn't foreseen. There had been a highly revered rabbi in our city, Rabbi Yechiel Dahan, and my mother's best friend had dreamt about him. In the dream, she saw him coming to my mother and putting a baby boy in her arms. Everyone considered this to be a sign from heaven, and many in the family thought the child should be named Yechiel after Rabbi Dahan. Things got even more complicated when my father revealed that he had committed to name the baby Shimon after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, because my father was a member of a group who would study the Zohar every night after the evening prayers. Some years before, my father resolved that if he would have a normal, healthy boy, he would name him after the Zohar's author. That is, the one whose teachings are recorded in the Zohar. After much debate, whether to name the baby after Rabbi Yosef Yitzhak, after Rabbi Yechiel Dahan, or after Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, a conclusion was reached. The honor of the local community was paramount. So I was named Yechiel Shimon, 2 out of 3, the 2 Sephardim out of the 3. The family wrote to the Rebbe to explain, and his response was, "You did the right thing to honor your community. God willing, you will have another son, and I ask that you name him Yosef Yitzhak." Indeed, 2 years later, my younger brother was born and was named Yosef Yitzhak. My mother now lives in Ashdod, Israel, and to this day, the Rebbe's picture hangs proudly in her living room. A nice story. Dr. Yechiel Lasri is an Israeli physician and politician who since 2008 has been the mayor of Ashdod, a city in southern Israel on the Mediterranean coast. The 10th day of the Jewish month of Shvat, which begins tonight, is the anniversary of the passing of the Rebbe Rayatz, the Rebbe Yosef Yitzhak, in 1950, and the date of the Lubavitcher Rebbe of our generation officially accepting the role of successor 1 year later.